Hi. I have like 4 topics in my head to discuss for this podcast. I don't know if I'm gonna do just like one or if I'm gonna discuss all 4, because they're all kind of like the same but also like kind of different. So just like bear with me, because I don't really know the direction that this podcast is gonna go right now. However, I'm gonna start somewhere. So I wanted to talk about social climbing. It was like the last thing that came to my mind, so maybe it's just like the freshest in my head. But I recently got this opportunity to like host a podcast for like a company. Anyway, it seems like a really cool opportunity, and I was chatting to the guy who runs the label, and I was basically saying to him, because for anyone who doesn't know, I used to do like a music series like 2 years ago, and that was really interesting to me. Like, it was really cool. But one thing that I noticed while I was doing that, and the people that I was involved with in that time, was this whole concept of networking. And I hate it. I think it brings out the worst in people. Honestly, I think it's like a kind of addiction, because you're not taking anything, but you know how like people can be addicted to like inanimate things. I feel like networking is one of the ugliest addictions that there is. So during this time where I was, climbing the drum and bass ladder, so to say, I met some really cool people, and I made some really great relationships that I still have to this day. And I learned a lot about communication and how people operate, and I learned a lot about how not to operate. And that's actually the reason that I don't know if I've ever like come out and spoken on why I don't do that series anymore, apart from the fact that I like don't even really listen to drum and bass anymore. I don't know, I just kind of grew out of it. I saw a lot of bad behavior within that environment, and it was funny because obviously I always viewed raving as this like super community oriented environment, and it is if you're the other side of the decks, like the dancey side. But honestly, the second you get behind the decks, like, it's disgusting back there. Like, don't aim for that. Like, it's not nice. Everyone's just trying to plug themselves, and like, don't get me wrong, there are times where you actually do just meet someone really genuine and you end up having a really nice conversation, but most of the time it's just networking. And it's funny because obviously networking is kind of like what you need to do. Actually, I don't believe that, but like a lot of people believe that networking is what you need to do in order to be successful. And you see this obviously in a lot of different industries, like, nepo babies and kind of like social climbers in any other industry, I guess, like fame related. And I feel like drum and bass was kind of like the really like the lowest level, because obviously, there are people that do make it big and do really well, but for the most part, like, you're not going to be able to fund your lifestyle solely off of drum and bass alone. Like, drum and bass is where I started making my money through my podcasting. Like, that's how it started for me. So it definitely like it made it enter like a different ballpark for me, as opposed to it just being a hobby. But honestly, the second like money was involved, I feel like it became underhanded. And some of the stories that like especially like women would tell me within that community about things that men had said to them, like one of the girls that I was friendly with, she's actually like a huge DJ now, like she's doing really well for herself, and she told me one time that this guy, I might have said this before actually, but this guy, he was a promoter, and he was like, if you have sex with me, I will give you a set. And I just think that's crazy. Like, it's so crazy how, I don't know, I feel like success these days is so calculated, and I really am a believer in like organic success, and that if you're meant to be successful, you will be. And like one of my friends, Kate, she's been telling me for ages, she's like, you need to add like a visual element to your podcast, you need to promote it on TikTok, you need to do all this, like blah 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 blah. And like, I completely get where she's coming from, and to be honest, I think if I did that, I'd probably have a lot more viewers, and my exposure would be a lot higher than it is. But do you know when something just like doesn't feel aligned for you and you're like, that's actually just not how, because for one, I don't have the urge to do it, which means that I do it for probably like a month and then give up because like, I don't know, it's like boring. That doesn't appeal to me, even though I have a marketing degree. But also like, I don't know, I just feel like that is not the way that my career is headed. Like my career is not headed for TikTok fame. Like that is not where, you know, my trajectory. And it's funny because I know, like, I trust my intuition in a lot of different senses. And I know that that is not what, like, my life path is destined for. Like, I know that TikTok, I genuinely see TikTok as a passing trend at the minute. And I think give it 5 years and there'll be a different platform. And I do think we're moving away from, like, long-form content and blah, 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 blah. And I think that for all these people that blow up and that is so great for them. But I honestly think that so many people just, like, kind of follow this trend of, like, what's everyone else doing? Okay, well, I'm going to do that. And it is kind of like, you know, networking in a sense, like making clips of your content and putting it online and trying to get people to see it and like staying engaged with people online. But it just feels so inauthentic to me. Like, I don't even know how to explain it. And I think maybe because I have a marketing degree and I know how it works, like it's incredibly obvious to me, like what people's intentions are. But I used to work for a marketing company and I used to do the social media for a few different clients. And the whole thing of like, so I did one I did was for a barber's, and we had to, basically you have to find every barber's within like a 15-mile radius, follow them, like their content, see what they're doing, pinch ideas off of them, pretend to be buddy with them, make connections with other people, like blah, 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 blah. And the thing is like, I get it. If that's actually what you want to do, like if that's actually how you feel you want, you know, I want to be part of this community, I want to whatever. This barber's just wanted to find the best ideas and steal them and use them for that, you know, for their own marketing, which is obviously understandable, but it's like your branding is built on a lie. And no one's going to know that. Like, no one's going to know that when they go there for the fucking, I don't know, what the haircut boys are getting these days. But it's silly to me that we put all this time and we invest all this money and we do all these things for, you know, like what? An increase in engagement. Like, what is engagement? Like, try and explain to someone who's 90 years old what engagement is. It doesn't matter. And I honestly, I know this is like hippy dippy of me or whatever, but I'm such a believer that if you're meant to be successful in something, it just happens. Like, you don't have to curate success. You can, but I don't think that's long lasting. Like, I don't think anything that is not for you can be long lasting or can be, you know, I don't know. I think it's just like the way that my brain is hardwired, but I'm such a big believer of like, if that's not the right person to be talking to, or if that's not the right avenue to be going down, or like, you know, you shouldn't be in a certain job, you will be given signs and hints that it's not for you, and they will get, you know, increasingly more and more and more bad until you have no choice but to leave. And I feel like this whole like curating success, and I think this is why so many people get cancelled, because they're not meant to be doing what they're doing. Or like, this is such a shit example, but do you know Bretman Rock? Like, he used to be so like problematic and like, I don't know, he was like beauty community, and now he like lives on a farm in Hawaii and just like hugs his chickens, and that feels so real. Like, that feels so authentic, and he doesn't get cancelled anymore, and he's not in any controversy because that's like what's aligned to him. And it's so funny that he had to move away from that like social climbing industry and the like popularity of like, I guess, LA, to become genuinely successful. I really hope this makes sense, because I'm sorry, I just left work, so I'm like my brain's a bit like in two minds. Like, I'm kind of like, should I be making a coffee or should I be making a podcast? But I hope that makes sense. Like, I don't know. When I did drum and bass, like, I used to speak to so many people, and I felt like I quite often wouldn't tell people that I had a podcast because, like, I don't know, it was funny to me how many people would not give me the time of day. And there were some like really big DJs that you probably know the name of, and I'm not going to name drop because that's embarrassing, but like genuine like big sellout festival stage DJs that did not give me the time of day until they realised that I knew someone that they liked. Or, like, I will never forget this one time I'm outside and I see a DJ that I like, and I was like, oh my God, hey, like, I really like your set, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, yeah, thanks. And I was like, okay. Like, he literally kind of just... Has anyone seen that video of J-Lo at the Met Gala being like, Scaparelli? And then she just, like, walks off. That vibe. It was like that. Like, just rude. Like, you know, the type of vibe where you walk away from someone and you're like, bitch. It was a man, though, not a woman. Just to... I don't know why I'm, like, making this a big deal. It's not a big deal. Anyway, and then one of my friends comes out, and he's doing, like, really well for himself now. And we were, like, hugs and everything, blah, blah, blah. And then the second that he saw that, he gave me the time of day. He asked my name. He asked how I was, blah, 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 blah. But if he hadn't have seen that I'd known someone that he deemed as worthy, he wouldn't have given me the time of day. And I just think that that is so fake and so phony. And I don't know, it's things like that. I see things like that and I'm like, you are here for one thing and one thing only, and that is success. And I just feel like success should be completely intertwined with authenticity and, like, genuine desire to pursue the thing that you're pursuing. I don't know what it is. Like, if you want to be a fucking scaffolder for the rest of your life, I don't know why I'm talking about scaffolding, but do you know what I mean? Like, you should really want to do the thing that you're doing, and I think that way it will come to you. But you shouldn't just want to do it because it makes you look cool, or, like, you shouldn't just want to do it because it's edgy, or, like, it gives you clout, or the people that you can meet. Like, I don't know, like, this boy that I used to know, like, around that time of my life, he said to me once, he was like, I literally can't go to a rave anymore. Like, I have to get like, into the green room or into the like, behind the decks. Like, I can't not. It's just, like, an urge. Like, and this is what I mean when I say it's kind of an addiction with social climbing. Like, people want nothing more than to just, like, be around people that they deem more successful than them. And it's interesting because oh my God, my voice, sorry, I'm kind of ill at the minute. I really feel like half of that is like a positive thing, because, you know, like, a lot of people say you never want to be the smartest person in the room. Like, you always want to be able to learn something from someone. So I can understand in that sense. But it's like the whole, I don't know, I think the digitalism, I don't know if that's a word, but, you know, the digital side of it all has all become about a flex and, like, a look who I'm with, or look where I was last night. And, like, don't get me wrong, I've fallen victim to this so many times, and I kind of had to, like, fall into the really, really bad side of it before I realised how embarrassing it is. Like, it's so embarrassing. Like, I don't know. Oh, I just think, honestly, I really feel like social climbing and networking you don't need to do that. Like, if you work hard at what you do and, you know, you put all the time into it, and, like, don't get me wrong, you're going to meet people and you're going to talk to them. But I think genuinely, like, because one of the reasons I think that I've retained friendships with the people that I have within, like, music, is because we actually talk about things other than music. I don't know, like, one of my friends said to me once, he was like, a lot of people that I talk to within the music industry, we have nothing to talk about other than music. And, like, that's probably the reason that I don't see these people outside of the music industry, because to me, they're useful for one thing. And, like, to me, I don't know, maybe this is just, like, a personal thing, but, like, I tend to, like, build pretty emotional connections with, like, a lot of different people. I think just because of, like, the nature of, like, the way that I talk, like, you know, I think I'm pretty good at, like, getting pretty deep stuff out of people relatively early on and, like, meeting them, which kind of is usually by accident. But I found that people then think, you know, they don't just think, oh, she just wants something from me, and, like, I don't. And I feel like it's hard when you meet someone and you feel like they just want something from you, or, like, they just, it's like a transactional encounter. And I don't know, maybe wanting to emotionally connect with someone is like a transactional encounter, I guess, in a sense. But maybe every encounter is transactional. I don't know. I'm not here to, like, philosophize it. But yeah, I think honestly, like, so many people go wrong because it's become so transactional. It becomes like, who do you know and who do you know? And like, you see all these videos of like parties in LA, or like, how many Instagram followers do you have? Blah, 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 blah. And like, I'm really like recently, honestly, trying to live life as if it was like the 1800s, obviously just like with a phone. Like, I'm trying to, like, I don't really believe in gyms because I feel like in the olden days, they didn't go to the gym. So just like do the things they did in the olden days, like run around and like lift some stuff up and like cut your grass and clean your house. Like, that's all, you know, natural human exercise. And, you know, eating things that are like the Mediterranean diet, and like, you know, just like trying to live holistically, like as holistically as possible. And the same goes with like human interaction. Like, I want to meet people organically, and I want to, like, you know, just bump into someone on the street and get chatting to them, and like, that's how, you know, I meet my new best friend. Like, things like that. Like, obviously it's a fucking pipe dream because of the generation we live in, but I'm trying to incorporate it in, like, back into my life, because I feel like we've lost that as a generation. The whole, you know, the concept of things being organic, and like, fucking hell, like, why is every Instagram post I see so like curated, and every reel is like, the cuts are perfect and everything's perfect? And like, honestly, I think that's like a big reason why I really like my podcast, is because I love my podcast. I'm sorry, I just have to say it. I really like my podcast. I don't really care. I don't even think that many people listen to it, to be honest, but I really like it because it's like, I don't know, it just feels real for me. And like, I like when I see other people that do things that feel real for them. And like, I feel like there's I sound like such a cliche person, but there is honestly like so much like fake things at the minute. And I saw this girl the other day, and I was like convinced that she was an AI. Like, I was convinced she wasn't real. And then she actually was real. And I was like, I actually now can't tell the difference between humans and AI. Like, what the fuck? Like, that's crazy. And I don't know. Honestly, I feel like the only way for me to like re-civilize myself and like normalize my brain is to just try and like go back to some kind of old timely way of thinking and doing things, and like communicating, and just like talking to people in the street, even though it's like really weird. And I'm actually just going to talk about this really quick because I thought it was really interesting. So I've been trying to do this thing recently called like rejection therapy. And I don't know, a lot of you have probably seen this video on like TikTok or Instagram, where this girl is like lying on the floor on a yoga mat, and someone goes up to her and is like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, it's called rejection therapy. Basically, you try and get as many people to like look at you weird or reject you as you can. And then afterwards, you don't feel like embarrassed to go and ask people things, or to you know, do things in public. Like, you don't have that. And she was like, she mentioned a book. I can't remember what the book was called, but she said like, there's like examples in the book, like go and lie down in a busy street, or go up to someone who's on the phone and ask them who they're talking to. I thought that one was really funny, because like, that's so embarrassing. Or like, go up and like, when you order a coffee, be like, can I make it? I don't know. I'm a barista, and I don't know what I would do if someone said that to me. But just like, I don't know, purposely getting rejected. It's like, we used to get rejected all the time when we didn't have a fucking telephone. Like, we used to have to stand in lines and just like look around at things and not just go on our phones. And I can't even walk to the shops anymore without going on my phone, because I feel awkward to see people staring at me through their cars, especially when there's traffic. And it's like things like this that like, no, this wasn't an insecurity that people had in the past. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure anxiety was a thing before, but I genuinely think one of the reasons that we have such like crippling levels of anxiety is because none of us can do anything without our phones. Like, none of us can just like exist. I sound like my mother, but obviously that's not the only reason. I'm not trying to be insensitive, but like, we constantly have this crutch of like, I can divert my attention. I don't want to think that people might be looking at me in this moment, or that, you know, we flirt with someone online because we don't want to risk doing it in person, because that's embarrassing and we don't want to get shut down. And like, you know, but is that helping us or is that hindering us? Because I think it's hindering us like heavily, and I don't know how to counteract that other than, you know, just rejection therapy, which sounds fucking horrible. Like, no one wants... Can you imagine going up to someone on the street that's on the phone and being like, who are you talking to? Like a random stranger. But also, like, what is the worst that can happen? Nothing. Like, nothing. It's not that bad. It's just the thought of it. Like, we've kind of, I think, trained our brains to just view everything as, like, cringe. And it's so weird because I feel like the perceptions of cringe are so subjective. Like, you know, you might see someone doing something cringe and another person doing something that's not cringe, but it's the exact same behavior. It just depends who's doing it. And I don't know where that line is, and like I'm not gonna try and delve into that right now because that's not the topic. But yeah, I don't know, I just think it's like, it's a really hard line to walk. Like, I don't want to get wrapped up in this digital world of like the numbers and the like how many fucking, what's my engagement? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't care for it. I don't want to know. I don't need to know. Like, it's not something that matters. I feel like we never used to focus on the numbers so much, and like, I don't know, I just feel like we feel this need to like track things now and like progress check everything and KPIs and targets and checking everything. Sorry, a lorry just drove past if you heard that. And, you know, it's so funny, like, I was watching Love Island last night with my mother, and she was like, for anyone that's, like, not watching it at the minute, there's, like, this one girl in there called Uma, and she's in a love triangle at the minute, and literally, like, every single day, it's like she's bloody accountant, like, she's just, like, constantly, like, so where's your head at? Where's your head at? Like, da-da-da-da. Can we talk about this? And I feel like she's my manager. Like, I feel like she's, like, honestly, through my screen, being my manager and being like, so, like, are you done with the progress report yet? And I don't understand what's with all this, like, it never used to be like this. I honestly think in the last, like, 5 years, it's become this way. Everything's, like, you know, SEO and KPIs and, like, bloody statistics and targets, and like you've got to meet these things, and you know, we didn't used to be like that. Like, obviously, don't get me wrong, there's obviously been professions that have always relied on targets and relied on, like, you have to track things and you have to know your margins, of course, but in things like how your romantic connection's going, no, like, can you imagine if you were dating someone and literally after, like, a week of knowing them, you were like, so how do you think we're getting on? Ew, if a boy said that to me, I would literally run for the hills. Like, it's so cringe. It's so embarrassing. And the fact that she's Leng doesn't make it any better. Like, I can't, I literally cannot. I think this is honestly the thing as well. There are so many attractive people in the world now that even being attractive doesn't stop you from coming across like my bank manager. Like, maybe 10 years ago, if someone had done that and they were just really hot, like, I wouldn't have cared and I would have been able to look past it. But I honestly just feel like the national level of, like, attractiveness has increased so significantly that even, like, it doesn't counteract it anymore. You know how, like, pretty privilege is a thing and, like, you know, pretty people get away with things that other people don't. When it comes to things like that, when it comes to social climbing, like, I just see straight through it. Like, you want something from me. This is I don't know. Maybe I've just been around loads of fucking social climbers, but maybe I think I used to be a bit of a social climber. Oh my God, I had this talk with my therapist the other day, and she said, I basically was like, I'm really worried that I'm a pick-me girl, because of my, like, trauma as a child. Sorry, it's, like, not deep, but, I feel like because I wasn't picked as a child, I now want to be picked, and, like, I'm putting power in people that I shouldn't be giving it to, you know? And she was like, yeah, well, everyone does that. Like, there was always a time when someone didn't get picked and they then want to be picked. And she kind of, like, deconstructed the term of pick-me girl for me. And she was like, to people that don't realize they're being a pick-me, all they want is to validate the thing that their inner child didn't have. And instead of judging people for, you know, doing those things, you should probably try and, like, break down why they're doing it. And don't get me wrong, if they're, like, putting you down in front of other men, like, I don't mean like that. But I mean, like, if you want someone to like you back, like, that's not really being a pick-me. That's just, like, trying to, you know, form something that you maybe haven't had before. And I don't know, she was just, like, making some really good points about how it's kind of, like, okay to openly like someone, or to, like, openly have an emotion towards someone. Like, I feel like at the minute everyone's so like guarded, and like everyone's basically aware that everyone's social climbing. And I was saying to her about how I used to feel like when I was younger, I used to want to be friends with the prettiest girls because I thought they were the most interesting. And as I got older, I realised that wasn't the case. Like, people don't operate that way. Like, looks don't correlate with beauty. And she basically was telling me that, like, in our brains, we're hardwired. Like, obviously, you know, physically, natural selection, we want to procreate with the most attractive people because we view them as having, like, the best, like, immune systems and blah, 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 whatever. And she was like, there's nothing wrong with that, but you also have to realise what is, like, a biological function of your body. It's kind of like a meditation thing. Like, you have to realise when your mind and body are doing something that they are, like, genuinely just, like, biologically instructed to do, or whether it's, you know, intuition or, like, your own thought. And when your thoughts are, like, you're like, well, I want to be friends with that person, but they're being horrible to me. And it's like, well, I only want to be friends with them because my body chemistry is telling me that we'd probably make a good child, you know? But that doesn't actually mean that I should make a child with them. Does that make sense? I don't know. I feel like I explained that in a bit of a weird way, but I was like, as I got older, I didn't want that anymore. Like, I wanted to make genuine friendships. And she was like, yeah, that's because you, like, grew up into yourself and you didn't need to search for these things in other people anymore. Like, you have them in yourself. So now you just look for people that are interesting, and, like, they, you know, no one needs to give you anything. And I think this is such a big part of, like, what I wanted to say in this podcast, is that you shouldn't look for people that are going to give you anything in your life. Obviously, the only exception I would honestly say is, like, in your job. And that's why it's difficult when people are trying to make a career out of a hobby, because those lines get so blurred. But specifically in friendships and relationships, like, I said this to someone the other day. I was like, it's not your responsibility to make me happy. Like, that's not your job. It's my job to make me happy. And they were like, yeah, it is my job to make you happy. I was like, no, you're people pleasing me. And I don't like it when people please me, because then I'm like, well, you didn't actually want to do that. You just did it because you think that's what I want. And now, if I don't give you the answer that you want, you get annoyed. And then, you know, this is the thing with people pleasers. Like, they don't mean to do it, but then they start resenting you because if you don't give them the happiness that they want, like, if you're not pleased with how they've tried to people please you, then they're annoyed and they're like, well, I can't do anything right. And it's like, that wasn't your job to do anything right. And that's really hard. Like, it's like a really hard concept for a lot of people to grasp, I think. But, like, I think this is why a lot of people have said, like, oh, you're so selfish, or you're, you know, whatever. But honestly, like, just doing what you want is so not selfish. Like, and if you want to fucking people please and you want to social climb and that is what's authentic for you, you crack on, because that is right for you. But for the most part, it is probably not right for you, and you probably shouldn't be doing that. But I just honestly think, like, if I could go back to, like, my, like, 19-year-old self and just be like, you actually do not need to, like, give this person the time of day. Like, you do not need to give these people the time of day just because. And the thing is, you never even realise that you're trying to do it to get something from them at the time. You're like, oh no, they're just really cool. But even thinking that is like, you know, you want something from them. You want to, like, you know, be in that coolness. You want to be able to say that you spoke to them, or, you know, have that accolade on your, I don't know, in your memory. But that's not how you're going to get ahead. Trust me, like, you might get ahead for a short while, but you will come crashing down. And so it's just so much better to build yourself up slowly. And, like, I have a few friends who have been, like, trying to, like, plod along with their successes for a while, and they are doing things authentically, and it does take more time. And, you know, people get disheartened and they're like, oh, like, sorry, another lorry went past. They're like, oh, like, one of my good friends, Joe, he's like, my music isn't doing as well as it was before, or, you know, I can't think of things as well as I did before. And I'm like, yeah, but at least you're trying. Like, at least you're not, you know, hiring someone to write your songs for you, or buying a song and then publishing it as your own. Like, you know, honesty equals a longer process. I don't know why I said it like that, but you know what I mean. Like, when something is honest and it is authentic, it tends to take a longer time to build it up to where you want it to go. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize, because we live in this, like, fast, everything needs to happen now. Like, I've been having this discussion recently with people that I just have absolutely no patience, and it is just a direct consequence of the life we live, like this hyper consumerist instant gratification lifestyle is just so terrible. Like, I love it so much, and I love being able to like press some buttons on my phone and then sushi's like at my door, because imagine trying to explain that to like a Victorian child. Genuinely, like try and explain like the things that we take for granted, try and explain that to like a caveman, because it doesn't make sense. Like, we're so far removed from like how we're actually meant to live. And obviously, like, the part of being alive at this time, you know, in the cosmos, is to experience it and enjoy it, but also, you know, don't bring yourself down and like let yourself be upset by something that is digital. Like, digital sadness should not exist. We should not be allowed to be upset from a digital standpoint. Like, maybe this is my new motto. Like, if a caveman wouldn't be upset about it, you shouldn't be either. And with that, I'm gonna call it a day. Thank you guys. I love you. I'll speak to you soon.